Welcome back to the pod. This is season 2, episode 5, MTP 4, Facilitate Meaningful Mathematical Discourse. Hey guys, it's Janann, and I am the GM for this episode for season 2, and this is MTP 4, and it's on Facilitate Meaningful Mathematical Discourse. So what it's mostly about is that it's mostly an exchange of ideas through classroom discussions plus verbal, visual, and written communication. So it's mostly saying how students are supposed to be able to communicate their own ideas, their own perspectives on approaching different problems in math, and how they're able to solve very differently, and how when they come into the classroom, they get to share their ideas on what they did at home, or they learned something different. That way the teacher can see, okay, this student is doing it this way while the other students are this way. So in my classroom, I can incorporate their own strategies and put it in the classroom, as well as try to see if they can learn my own kind of strategy. The cool thing about this is that it can lead to debates. So some students can be like, no, that doesn't work with me. I kind of like it this way. And the teacher can be like, okay, well, I'm not going to focus on that specific strategy because I can see that a lot of people don't really get it. And at the same time, you have to also make sure that you do know in the back of your head, I have many different students that learn many different ways. There are people that are very, I don't want to say slow, but they don't get things very fast. So
they have slower processing time.
Exactly, thank you. Slower processing, yeah. So it's important for you to keep that in the back of your head and make sure that they're able to understand the different types of approaches, because if you're also adding other students' ideas, they maybe just learned the teacher's kind of strategy, and now they're learning 5 different types of ways, 6 different types of ways, and that makes them kind of feel a little bit anxious and a little more pressured and overwhelmed. They're like, oh my god, what is this? What's going on? And it's good for students to see their own classmates' different perspectives on the problem, because they get to see that you don't always have to solve it one way. There's many different ways, and that makes them feel more comfortable. That makes them feel like they can learn many different ways, that there's not only one way of learning, that there's many different types of let's say paths to get to where you need to be in the classroom and where you have to be in your academics. Also, for conceptual understanding plus meaningful learning, I think that it's important that teachers must be able to figure out ways to get students engaged. As a teacher, you have to be able to figure out questions and figuring out ways where students are able to speak up on that. Because if students aren't speaking up on it, other students are not going to know what their students are doing or what way they're trying to approach those specific problems. And that's what you want to do as a teacher. And since it is your classroom and it is your students, as a teacher, it's very important for you to know what students speak what student participates more, what student mostly has a leading role. And once you kind of find that question, or you can call on that student, he or she might be very excited to answer, because it depends on the grade, obviously. I know that in 3rd grade they get very excited to answer questions, so once they answer questions, they kind of take that little lead role, and then another student jumps in, another student's kind of jump in. That's where you kind of get the discussions going. And lessons, the teacher's not the only one that's supposed to be doing all the talking. Yes, she's supposed to be showing you the different, what this lesson is about, what you're going to be learning, all these things, but the students as well have to participate and kind of show that they understand it and that this is what they're doing, because that's how a teacher knows that she's doing it. She's actually making students learn, that students are getting something from it.
I feel with that, I feel students really learn best when they talk through the problem with other students. I think I said a quote in the first or the second episode of season 2 that students learn best when they facilitate through their discussions. When they talk through the problem, that's how they truly comprehend the information that they're actually learning.
Yeah. I thought of, when Janann was introducing this, I thought of when we were in Dr. King's class this past week and we did the jigsaw activity, because it's you're with a group and you're told to be experts on this topic, so you learn about it, you discuss it, and then you go to other groups and you're okay, so, and you all put your knowledge together. I'll come to you guys and I'm okay, so we just talked about, I forget what mine was, it was something about rectangles, doing the area of rectangles. And I was okay, so this is our lesson, this is the first lesson, second lesson, and third lesson. This is why we chose to do it that way. blah, blah, blah. And then I get to hear little tidbits of other people's perspectives on different things too.
My favorite thing that I've done in the classroom so far, not even just to do with math, but like I've done this across a couple lessons, is try and facilitate like a little mini debate where I'll present a question to the class and I'll be like, who thinks this? And then like, people will raise their hands, and then like, who thinks that? And then students will raise their hands, and then I'll select like one student from one group, one student from another, and I'm like, why do you think this? And then they'll explain. And the other student, I'm like, why do you think this? And they both like present their ideas, and I kind of talk them through, and talk the rest of the class too, through that thought process. And I really like it because the kids way want to participate. Like Janine said, third graders love to participate. So they get really excited and they all want to be the representatives, and so clearly it's effective, but students get to gain other perspectives and other ways of thinking about things through meaningful mathematical discourse. Because I did do it with I intended to do it at my math lesson, but things don't always go the way that they're planned. But yeah.
And when students have like these type of discussions, and once they do those like group work or a class kind of thing, you get to see that students kind of like reach to that specific understanding. So once we have like 4 people learning, like trying to like problem solve, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Like they're all like working together, and they're kind of like, oh my god, yes, there we go. This is how I did it back in the day. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like very, very good. And I feel like, sorry, what were you saying?
I think right now what we do in every single podcast.
That's what I was thinking too.
Mathematical discourse.
The GM is a teacher, and the rest of us are the little students.
Yeah. Because we master one subject, and then we try to teach it to the others.
That's what we did for the pod.
Exactly.
And real world examples.
I know, right? And my favorite thing that I learned from my pre-prac from my teacher is that he would always ask the students to do turn-in talks, which is something that I love and that I did in all of my lessons, because I think that's such a good way to get the students to like be introduced. Like, what is subtraction? Do a turn-in talk. Okay, what did you say? What did you say? Oh, that's so interesting. It really makes them excited to participate. And I know also third graders, kindergartners, all of them love to raise their hand and be the one to be talking. They love
100%.
it. My favorite version of that is have the students turn and talk, and then have one of the students say what the other students said.
Yeah.
So make sure they're actually saying what they should be.
And they're paying attention
like,
to
interacting.
the other one, yeah. And it's just like, and honestly, like in the classrooms, I don't think we have enough like verbal like things where like you can like, how do I say it? Like it's all like written on like assignments and classwork. Like kids can't like show their answers or show their ideas based on like verbal use and like communication. And I feel like that's very important to include in the classrooms, especially with math, because in math you're just writing a lot on paper or like, and it's not mostly like talking and communicating. So I feel like that's very super important. And honestly, like as a teacher, you have to be able to direct these conversations, right? Just in case the students get off topic and don't participate, because you kind of want them to be able to get in and pitch in. So a lot of students are shy, so it's important to kind of like push them a little bit into speaking. And there's also something called the discourse community. So it's mostly says how students should be able to explain why they did it and how they did it. So like, how did you come up with this? Where did you get this strategy? So that the teachers are like, oh wow, like they got it from this place, And teachers are also learning from their students, and I think that's super cool. And I don't think that a lot of teachers would probably say that's true, but it's true. It's very important that you learn from your little kids, just because as a teacher you did learn very differently back in the day, and that in many different generations, everybody learns different ways. I mean, look at now, like the curriculum has changed and stuff like that. And the little kids are like the author of their own ideas. They get to like defend that they did this. Like how I said in previous podcasts, how I was a kid and I kind of approached problems in a very different perspective in very different ways. And my teacher would never like really like understand, if that makes sense. She kind of would push me to do it her own way, and I feel like it's important for teachers to understand it. It's important for me to defend that I did this because this helped me, and I can also maybe, who knows, like some other kid with my ethnicity or with my like
background.
My own background has like, I can help them as well. Like I can help them, like he did it the same way, like I'm trying to speak up on that, and I think it's super important that students shouldn't be like quiet at all. And when students are also like sharing their own ideas and their own perspectives. It's very important that they also go back to their like math objectives and math goals. So you want them to be on the correct path, on the right path, right? You don't want them to get off topic. So when students do this, you're kind of like, oh my god, like, yes, that's what you're trying to get out of. Like, that's exactly what's going to help you reach how to, like, I don't know, remembering Leila's lesson, how to create number bonds, or understanding what's equal to, what's less than. So see, that's very important for students to do. Also for my group back, I know that my teacher does like this, it's called like a team circle meeting, and students share like the difficult stuff that, like the difficult things or challenging stuff that they face in the classrooms, and like what they struggle with, and what works for them, what strategies are helpful. So the teacher's like, okay, like if that's not helpful, like what way do you want me to approach the problem? Or like, yeah, that's exactly right. And I know that there's one girl who is incredibly smart, and she loves raising her all the time. She's always like, well, I did it this way because my mom showed me this way, and she always gives me a candy after I finish. Oh my god! And then all the kids are like, oh my god, lucky. She's like, yeah, but I know how to do this in many different ways. But I do like, and then she's always like, but I do like your way, Miss blah 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 blah. And the teacher always gets so happy when she's sharing it, because she is mostly like a leader in her classroom. And she does like to help students a lot. She likes to like be like a student helper, like a teacher helper kind of. And then she kind of says, no, you can do it this way. Like this is going to help you. And she like shows the work on the paper. So I think that's like really nice. I mean, like as a teacher, if I had like many kids doing it, I kind of feel proud of myself. Like, oh my god, like you're learning something. Or, like, oh my god, like these different ways are so cool. And I feel like as a teacher, you also get to see like, wow, it also ties back to prior knowledge, right? Because like wherever they got those kind of strategies or stuff like that, it's kind of like, wow.
It helps you see how they think, and letting kids have the sort of team meetings like that, and talk about like where they feel like they're weakest or where they're struggling, and like where they're strong, and like their favorite methods of doing things. Like other students are going to hear different perspectives, and like Janan said, teachers are also learning from their students. So a student might be like, oh, my mom showed me how to do this way. You're like, wait, I've never heard of that way before. Yeah. That's crazy. And then you see it, you're like, that's awesome. That's cool. So like, it's important to let kids have that social interaction portion of math, because I feel like math is always represented in a way that's like, oh, gotta do a math minute, gotta, learn about what addition is, like whatever, like, and it's not presented as a subject that's heavy with discourse, it's heavy with speaking, except for like all the technical language. So allowing students to have a similar experience in math than like in a history class or an English class where you're going to be doing more talking, like I know this doesn't really have anything to do with it, but now that I'm saying this out loud, I'm thinking of it, like putting it on the same level. Like students are going to enjoy math more if they're not othering it from their other subjects, and allowing them to have a discussion and learn from each other.
And not only do they learn from each other, but I feel like when we facilitate meaningful like conversations with the students, we also learn as like teachers. Like we get like the insight from them. Like they don't only just like learn from each other. I feel like every single time I've heard a student, like I'm thinking about like number talks a lot. Like I feel like I learn a lot from a student every time I hear a number talk, because they'll point out something that I don't necessarily think about.
Yeah, like, oh, I never thought of it.
Yeah, like I really I learn from them. Not only do they learn from me, you know.
And the thing is, like, I feel like it's also important for the teacher to show her own example, because like I would also be like, oh my god, like I actually like her way better than what I've been taught, It's also a good way for students to learn. And quickly going back, it kind of relates to social cultural stuff, just because like I know they're also in social cultural, they're like communicating, and they're kind of like expressing their own ideas and their own stuff, and this is what I did, this is what I've done. It also ties back to this MTP, which is actually really cool, just because like, that's exactly what you're doing. You're holding conversations in math, and I feel like math should be like, they should have a lot of discussions in math. But also I just want to say for Miss Brooks' lesson, I know we're talking a lot about Miss Brooks, but I mean, she's amazing, so she's a very good example to use. But you can see in the beginning that when she's kind of like saying, okay guys, like solve this, blah blah blah, like how she was doing for the fractions and stuff. When she left the kids, they're facilitating meaningful mathematical discourse there, because they're teaching their classmates, like, okay guys, like I got problem 30, I got the answer 38, or sorry, 1/4 for 1/2, I think it was 1/2. And then the kids are like, whoa, like, oh yeah, like why did you do it? And the kid explained what she was doing step by step. But before she did explain, the teacher did tell her, okay, great job, but can you please tell these students how you did it? And then she left. You're kind of giving the students the role of almost like leadership as well. You're letting the kids take control of it, and that students are like, okay, like, wow, like I'm kind of, not like I'm in the spot, but like, okay, like I have to teach my classmates what I'm doing.
Yeah,
you
like they have an opportunity.
Yeah, you kind of feel good about yourself doing it as well, because you're like, oh my god, like my classmates kind of understand it. And then maybe like if the kid does it, the other kid is going to be like, oh my god, like that's so cool, like that helps me a lot more, like this is really simple and very easy.
Yeah.
But
kind of going off that, I know I have an example for my pre-prac. For my gateway assignment, I was collecting students' whiteboards to show them like how to do it in different ways. And I grabbed one student's whiteboard to show another student how to like write the drawing properly, and the student asked me, he was like, oh, are you like showing my work to like show them how to do it? And he felt really like proud of himself, because that student struggles with getting his work done. He just likes to perfect his work before he does his work. So like he'll perfect his name, he'll perfect the drawing, blah blah blah. But after I'm like, yeah, no, I'm showing him how to do it from your whiteboard. He tried to explain it to the student that was next to him how to do it, kind of like engaging in the mathematical discourse.
Yeah, kids want to do that, and it's important for the teacher to play an active role in that by facilitating the conversation, because like a third grader may not know how to have like a discussion like that and like be able to accurately portray their thoughts, or they might not even know that's what you're asking of them. So that the fact that Ms. Brooks was like, explain to your peers how you did this, the kids were still able to have an independent conversation, but she still sort of got the ball rolling.
Yeah.
And I think quickly, as a teacher, it's super important that you include all of the students, not just one or two. It's important that you include everyone, just so they feel very like, oh my god, like we did it, and they feel very proud of themselves. That is where you could also like kind of show positive reinforcement, because it's very important to give like positive feedback on the students, and not just, you know,
Because
they
that's
kind of
how
feel
they wanna
happy, and they're kids,
participate.
you know, and they're just learning, and they feel so happy, and like
You want to let them know that they're doing good.
you're doing great, guys,
Yeah.
like you're doing good.
That
But-
makes them want to keep trying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yes, this is all about facilitating meaningful mathematical discourse. And thank you so much, guys.
Thanks for
Perfect,
listening.
thank you.
The credits are the Principles to Action PDF, as well as Ms. Brooks' lesson.